Welcome to this special edition, new edition, Christmas edition, New Year's edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camel's Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. You will understand why more doctors chose Camels than any other cigarette. More Jews smoked Camels than any other cigarette. Well, today's show is kind of on the run. Karen and I are going to go into the woods and bathe with the trees. We've got this year the North Country Trail 100-mile challenge. We want to make sure that we can get 100 miles of the North Country Trail in 2024. And I've just finished morning prayers. I want you to know that since here I am, as I've said before, that I'm an atheist, that but you wouldn't know from looking at me, right? I mean, here's the fact is that we know this is not speculation or mythology. Jews have been putting on these boxes on their arms and on their heads for over 2,000 years. We have found them in the Qumran caves. It's like it probably goes back 3,000 years. I don't want to speculate too far into the past, but the fact is that these little boxes contain prayers that are then woven into the box so that you can't read them. So you have a little book, and instead of being able to read the book, you seal it up and then you put it on your head and your arm. I've often wondered how much sense that makes, but we've been doing it forever. I mean, for thousands of years. These are, these little strings in the Torah. It says, and God commanded Moses to. God said to Moses to command Israel to put these strings on the corners of your garment. Whether you believe in God or not, the command is clearly there. These commands existed, and a command, doesn't need to be obeyed to exist. A command just exists. So I've always been fascinated by this sense of rootedness, of belonging, and I've said that that quite a bit of my religion is I'm attached to these texts. I've said before that Judaism is kind of synchronized reading. So every morning we get together and we dress for the occasion. We put on the accoutrements of prayer, and then we begin this very elaborate synchronized reading that takes about an hour. Depends. You can do it in 20 minutes, especially if you don't have a minyan to go to. But it's a lot of reading, and we do it fast. It's like a synchronized. When you're doing synchronized reading for over a couple of thousand years, you learn how to really get it done, because there's so much to read. I mean, it's like my house is stuffed with archives. You can see, but that's the history of the Jews. We can't seem to throw anything away. I mean, people come and burn our houses down and and take our shit away, but we're out here assiduously writing new words and saving them up so that and it's not easy to carry a library. So they talk about how people like to have a travel light. There's nothing light about the way I travel. I've got 15,000 volumes in this house. 70 file drawers, boxes of stuff, and this is essentially my life. So I have. There we go. We'll put this away. So this is today's show on the hook. And what I wanted to do is a stand-up show, but there were a few things I wanted to say. I wanted to dedicate this show, first of all, to the memory of Murray Zuckoff, very dear friend of mine, who this died in 2004 at the age of 79 from lung cancer. You see, this is the fact is that smoking will cut your life short. And sure enough, poor Murray, he passed away at 79 after a lifetime as a smoker and as a journalist. He started off working in New Jersey. He was born in the 1920s, I think, and he was a journalist in Paterson, New Jersey, at one of these morning newspapers, and he did investigative journalism. Then he became the chief editor of the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. He was married to my dear friend Aviva Cantor, who Aviva and I have a standing telephone conversation every Erev Shabbos, every Friday. We talk for an hour or so. So when I first met Murray, I was in City College doing my master's degree on John R. Commons. And when I told Murray that, oh yes, I'm working on a master's dissertation on John R. Commons, he said, oh, John R. Commons, the labor historian. And that just, to this day, there's some experiences that you have in life that you really don't forget. And this was one of them. I have never met anybody else who has, John R. Commons and Richard T. Ely. Yes, the Christian socialists and the labor historians at the beginning of labor history in America. Sure, he knew all. He was this self-educated intellectual, just really, really knowledgeable, especially about labor history. And about socialism and Zionism, and he was a passionate, fighter for social justice. So Murray's Yortzeit is coming up tomorrow, and we'll be lighting a candle for him. And I thought I would mention him in the show. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, the bad news. This, by the way, is my journal. I just, notes here. The week, every week, more bad news, just dreadful news. And one of the things that I picked up on this week was a friend of mine posted a comment about the year that she has had, like my brain, what my brain is doing with depression, anxiety cycle, and that wants to shut everything off and ponder whether I have any cultural relevance or practical rights. Also, there's a slow-moving family tragedy, economic instability, and the whole, when do we catch our breath between overwhelming socio-political crisis mode? And, it becomes increasingly difficult. It's like the air is becoming denser, and the tragedies follow one upon the other. And I was reading the New Yorker. There was an article by Rachel Aviv, who I very much like her writing, and she had this like 9,000-word article on Joyce Carol Oates. And I have a copy of Joyce Carol Oates' short stories, just random. It was on my shelf. I have random things on my shelf that I have never actually read, but it sits on the shelf, and I see it, and I see it, and I see it, and I see it. And this thing's been on my shelf, I'm sure, 3 decades, at least 4 decades, probably 4 decades. And so this article comes along in the New Yorker, and so I started to read it, and I realized, wow, she is a really interesting writer. So I pulled it out and I started reading, and indeed, it's very interesting. But so her fiction, this is from Rachel Aviv. Her fiction often dramatizes grisly news involving kidnapping, serial killings, disappearance, rapes, prompting so many questions about her preoccupation with violence that she felt compelled to publish an essay in the Times criticizing that line of inquiry. Quote, The question is always insulting, she wrote. The question is always ignorant. The question is always sexist. Her fiction, she explained, was simply reflecting the cruelty of the world. We seem to have inherited the assumption that the grounds of our discontent, anger, rage, and despair, unhappiness in general, resides within us rather than outside of us. That's a really important point to make. The source of our unhappiness is not inside of us. It's really out there. We are really unfortunate enough to be at the very tail end of the existence of our species, which, I mean, it hasn't been too bad a ride, mind you, but it is just dark and getting darker all the time. And it's the sadness, the depression, the difficulty in breathing comes from outside. Where it's never the idea of COVID. That's the other thing where we've been looking at is the long COVID. The people watching, you see how people actually do change over time when they have long COVID. It has a toll on them and on their mental abilities. They just seem to be, they're not the same person any longer. They don't have the same energy any longer. It's that something has been taken away from them. And quite often these are young people who you knew before and you know now, and you have to be saddened for that. My advice, as always, take the Camel's Challenge before it is too late. You don't need to live past 79 anyway. Take Murray's advice here. He was a lifelong smoker. He had this profoundly wonderful, impactful life, and he passed away at 79. And may his memory be for a blessing. I'll see you all next week. Have a good week, and we'll see you with more bad news.